Equity and Anti-Bias, Anti-Racism Education for Post 3, Mitchell Ochoa. And then the ideas were presented in all of the resources are vital to creating a safe learning environment. As educators, we want to focus on educating students, but at the same time, we can aid in the development of creating awareness for many of the social issues that we currently have. Um, so we're far behind, but there's change that is happening right now, and we can, continue to participate in that. Um, so unfortunately, we've been playing catch up for a long time now, and in one of the resources, covered white privilege. So we are making strides to reduce many of the gaps that have been created by white privilege. I strongly believe that we as educators can empower our students with knowledge, and at the very least, we can continue to raise awareness through this knowledge that's presented to our students, for their best interest in their future. There's another resource that was from the San Diego County Office of Education that was focusing on equity in instruction and curriculum. Uh, so now that we are in this pandemic, a lot of the most vulnerable students have been greatly impacted. Far worse now. All the problems they had are now doubled, right? Or the number one thing that was on the resources that was on their resource was for the students was communication. And then another thing that kind of stood out, just from reading it, was the lack of resources that the students have. And it took a pandemic to try to get a computer to every one of these students, along with access to internet. Um, and hopefully we find a way to keep those Wi-Fi devices and the laptops at home for those students, because that would bring us, a little closer to equity, right? So we would want those students to continue to have access to these devices at home, continue to practice, continue to learn and grow from that. Once we get, come out of this pandemic. Um, so how can we change students if we already categorize them, right? So that's one of the implications from the video that we watched, a single story, right? So how can we challenge students, right? We want to challenge them to think and grow and learn. And if we already have an idea of them, whether it's a bias or we just don't know, simply ignorance, we don't know about the culture, we need to learn, we need to be proactive, right? And engage them. Um, so for, as teachers, how do we create engaging lessons if we don't learn about a student's culture, right? For students, how can they display their creativity if they're not allowed to engage in the lesson, right? If it's not for them, how can we include them, right, in these lessons that we're putting out to them? Um, and then another resource is change, right? We can change as educators. We can raise awareness, and being on the inside, we change the system from the inside out by taking action for equity, right? It's very important, I think. Something that we can do. We can continue to get together. It shouldn't an anti-bias, anti-racism education. I think something that touched on this was for me, something that stood out too was the uh, podcast episode for Cult of Pedagogy for Restorative Justice in School. That stood out to me. So the guest was Victor Small Jr. So he stated that when a school suspends a student and sends them home, there would be no reflecting what it is that happened, that incident, right? The student won't develop any skills from staying at home alone with probably nothing to do. So suspending a student is something that I always found to be counterproductive, right? It's almost like just get the issue or get that problem, put it over there for a little bit, and then the teacher can kind of, go about their day, and then the student comes back. But it doesn't teach them anything. Um, there's no, it shows the students that we don't care about them, right? Go over there for a few days and just do nothing. Um, we don't include them in the decision of, what should the punishment be, right? Um, they don't develop any skills, how to cope with the solving problem solving or coping. If it's something that happened to them or they did something and now they feel bad, right? So how do they deal with those emotions? And then there's no sense of community if you just get rid of the problem, kind of how we have our prison system right now. You know, there's a problem, and yeah, we'll put you over there, and then hopefully you can make it out of there and come back, join us. So there's no community, right? And then respect. Um, so no tolerance rules are very strict and imply to our students that we don't care about them. Here's an incident that happened, we should talk about it, rather than sending the students away. Um, because us as adults, we can kind of figure out those emotions and figure out what it is that we want to do after reflecting. Who did it affect? But students aren't sometimes able. They all they are is sometimes just emotions, and they don't know how to handle it, and they don't really see all the